Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 13. Another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week. So let's crack on. First one is positive news, I guess, of sorts. So this is actually from the James Mason University and I think also the US Defense Department as well. And this is a report that says if you have been affected by COVID, then you have a more positive outlook on humans and humanity and technology as well. So this was actually done using what's called the dictator game, which is a relatively standard sort of, I guess, science research test. Broadly speaking, you give somebody some money and there's somebody on the other side, and then if you agree to share the money or if you agree to keep the money and basically hoodwink the other people, if you trust them more, you're more likely to split it or give it to them, and if you basically don't trust them, you'll probably keep it to yourself. However, lots of examples of this test, and they switched it up by actually running it with a computer or some technology as well on the other side as well, which people knew about. So it turns out, based on previous tests, then people who have been affected by COVID were more likely to think that technology is good. So this is something to do essentially with altruism, and people would like to think that technology has got a wider role in the future, especially if there's another pandemic, etc. So good news, I guess. NFTs at the moment, it's the big thing, so I thought I'd better do an NFT slide. So this is Pringles, who have launched a digital flavour. So this is NFT flavoured Pringles. Of course it isn't. It's an MP4 movie file. However, you can go and buy one of 15 or 50 limited editions. They started out at £1.24, and now they are trading for 1.2 Ether. Which is about $2,000, about £1,500. So the usual NFTs apply, or the usual rules, which is nobody quite knows what the value is. However, it's usually the people who bought them and traded them that make the most money, etc., etc. So this is the reason I included this. Is a really interesting example of how a brand has taken on, like, what can we do with NFTs. You can just imagine in the advertising agency, somebody's going like, how can we use this? This has got great newsworthiness at the moment, and sure enough, it has. So that's why I've featured it. Dove, talking about advertising, I've been following a lot of their campaigns for a long while, and their campaign is about real beauty, and their latest campaign is quite an interesting take on it, in that they want other brands to take on diverse and representative models for their ads. So if you were a brand, you're thinking, actually all of that casting and stuff is expensive and difficult, so we're going to do the safe option, which is pretty much where the problem lies. And by the way, 70% of women still don't feel represented in advertising and media. So basically what you do is you can then choose one of the Dove models, and Dove will pick up the tab, or at least the recruiting for the model tab. So it's a really interesting angle in how does media move forwards with better representation. Just another example. Yeah, the disinformation dozen. So look at these people on screen. These are pretty much the responsible people for a lot of the anti-vaxxer disinformation. And when I say a lot, I mean on Facebook, 73% of all disinformation comes from these 12 people. They are also responsible for 17% of disinformation, anti-vax disinformation on Twitter as well. So this is a huge study, and there's quite an interesting report, quite nicely designed as well, which actually looked at nearly 700,000 posts on Twitter, on Facebook, sorry, and found these people to really be at the start of the process. So Facebook were asked for a comment, and clearly the Facebook did a Facebook and said, well, it's not really about disinformation, it's really about us connecting more people with more positive information, so we don't really have to do much. Whereas Twitter, as you can see, from 70% are sort of actively in that as well, actively trying to do it. So but as you can see, if you look at the red words underneath each one of the people, then it still says they're active, 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 and active. So there you go. It's interesting in as much as you know, this is also similar. If there's a crime wave in a local part of the town, it's usually a few perpetrators that do it, and once they are sort of taken care of, then it usually clears up. And obviously, a lot of the news we're hearing about Facebook is really down to these 12. There you go. The demo scene. Now, if you're not into the demo scene, maybe you are not of a certain age, or just maybe, unlike myself, you probably have a life. The demo scene is really computer demos, really sort of took a hold in the late 80s, early 90s, on machines like the Amiga, or the Commodore 64 before that, the Spectrum even, or the BBC Micro. Anyway, point is culture, or at least intangible culture is actually being recognized by UNESCO. So this is a sort of a slightly creeping process in that Finland last year were the first people, or first country to say we think that the demo scene specifically is worth protecting as essentially, a national heritage. Germany have only recently just also backed it up, so that's two. And obviously the more that start to actually also defend this, then it will become a sort of an international policy for UNESCO as well. So the reason I thought this was interesting is I used to develop demos back in the day. And also there are things like Macromedia Director, or even or Adobe Flash as it then became. There's a lot of work that I personally have done that I now can't play, I can't view, I can't watch. I kind of have to get a really old machine with all of its kind of viruses and stuff, and replay it on scuzzy drives and all sorts of words that people don't actually have anymore. So there's a huge amount of creativity and culture that has gone into the work I've done that I now can't show anybody, and essentially has become invisible. It's been erased from the world. So it's really good to see UNESCO starting to recognize the demo scene as part of cultural heritage. So that's really neat and quite interesting. The war on algorithms. So this has been again creeping up for a while, but now we are seeing sort of civil lawyers starting to coalesce around this and start to defend people. So what is this about? Well, obviously, if you're of a certain age in the UK, you might have received your vaccine. An algorithm allowed that text to go out to your mobile phone that gave you the vaccine, for instance. So whether you have a credit rating, whether you're allowed insurance or not, whether you've got medical treatment or something like that, so or even credit. So all of these things are dictated by algorithms. Now humans create algorithms most of the time, and obviously if you're on the wrong end of the algorithm, then it's actually very unjust. So how do these algorithms happen? They're very opaque, and also when they go out to tender, nobody's really sure exactly who owns or who is responsible for the algorithm. So what exactly this looks like is lawyers questioning companies to actually show transparency in their algorithms. So I can see this gaining momentum to essentially have some sort of kite mark or some sort of badge that says this algorithm has been, proved to be fair and just. At the moment, they're very vague, rather unjust in a lot of cases. So interesting movement. And finally, possibly one of my weirdest watches of the week. So this is Trackmania. So this is a game that came out, I don't know, 2003. So it's fairly old now, and it's a fairly basic racing game, but it's more of a physics experience than it is a racing game. And what people found out, and what you're seeing right now, is people going off track, right? You're not supposed to do this. This is somebody whoever designed this game left a bit of a barrier out, and we can actually just cut out a whole loop of this track, and we can then join the track later. So that's a shortcut. Developer didn't imagine people would find it, didn't even think about it, and yet people then, well, I can actually cut off 5 or 6 seconds through this. So this video, and I won't spoil it, please do look up the Trackmania Impossible Shortcut. There's a great video, it's about 13 minutes long, and it takes you down a really interesting story about the dedicated followers and the players of this game that can actually find the shortcuts. And the final shortcut, which is, I had trouble trying to put this clip together, so I didn't show you what the shortcut was, or any of them, because it's a fascinating story about almost a pointless human endeavor, which is the whole point about humanity. These people, after 13 years, an impossible shortcut which nobody even knew about until recently has actually has been challenged, should I say. I won't spoil it, but a brilliant video. Look it up, or if you want to, try and copy the link down and have a look at it on YouTube. That's brilliant. So really amazing, and just how pointless humanity can be sometimes, but also how brilliant. With that, we are done. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next week.